What's going on, guys? Welcome back to How to Make a Game in Unity for Beginners. My name is Dustin. Be sure to like and subscribe, comment down below. And what we did last time is we created this coin here, and we created a UI system to be able to kind of keep score of how many coins we pick up. Um, so what I want to do now is I want to make this a little bit more on the organized side. First thing I'm going to do is one thing that I should have done at the beginning is I should have created a few of these folders here to kind of put all of our scripts and materials in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of new folders. I'm going to call one scripts, not scripts, PTS scripts. I'm going to create another new folder. I'm going to call this materials. And that's all I'm going to do for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag all of my scripts into my script folder. It's compiling right now for some reason. Let's do that one more time. And then I guess it's going to do that every time I drag a script in. So let's do that. And then I'm going to grab all of my materials and put them in my new materials folder. Just like that. So now what I want to do is I want to create a game manager to kind of manage all of our functions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, create a new empty object. I'm going to rename this game manager. And then what I'm going to do is create a new script, but this time instead of creating it over here by right clicking, I'm going to highlight our game manager. I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to create a new script this way by typing in game manager and clicking new script and create an add. And what that's going to do is just going to automatically add that script into my game onto my game manager, and then I can just click and drag that into our scripts folder. So I'm going to open up this game manager script in Visual Studio, and first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and open up our enemy script, because our enemy script is going to have some basic functionality to it. All of our enemies are going to be able to kill our player. All of our anytime our player gets killed, it's going to run this loading bit of code here. So what I want to do is I'm going to take all of these variables, I'm going to cut them out with Control X, and I'm going to paste it into our variable section in our game manager. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing to our little timer here. I'm going to cut that out of our update function. I'm going to put that in our game manager function. And then I'm going to do the same thing inside of this if check here on our onCollisionEnter function. So I'm going to cut that out here, and I am going to put it in a new function down here. I'm going to say public void kill player, because that's really the only thing that our enemies are really doing right now at the moment is killing off our player. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into our kill player function. And now it doesn't have a reference to this other anymore, because the other was in reference to this collision here. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top here. I'm going to create a new reference to our player controller. So I'm going to call this private void player. Oh, excuse me, not private void. We're just going to do private player controller, and we're going to call this the player. And then in our start function, just above the if check, I'm going to say that the player, is equal to find object of type player controller. And we can do it this way because there's only going to be one player controller in our scene at any given time. So we know that it's only ever going to reference our player. So now what I want to do is change this other to the player. So now it knows what it's going to destroy. And then the next thing that I want to do is our script doesn't have a reference to our scene management system. So like we did in our enemy script up here at the top, we can actually just go ahead and cut this out so we don't have to type it in again and paste it right up underneath using Unity Engine. Just like that. I'm sorry, I just realized that I put this in our start function, which is exactly not where we want it. So I'm going to cut that out one more time and put it where we do want it to be in our update function. And that's all we need to do in the game manager for the moment in order to kill a player. Now what we need to do in our enemy script is we need a reference to our game manager script. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with our player controller, because there's only going to be one game manager in our scene at any given time. So we can just type in private game manager, and I'm going to call it the GM. And then in our start function, we can just say the GM is equal to find object of type game manager. Perfect. Now we have a reference to our game manager. So now when our player collides with our enemy, what do we want to do? We want to basically just run this little function right here, because what's going to happen is once we run this function on collision, it's going to destroy our game. It's going to just destroy our player. It's going to set should load to true, which is going to trigger this check here. So if should load is true, then we're going to bring the wait to load number down until it hits 0. Once it hits 0, then we're going to reload the scene. I'm going to rename this, actually. Instead of scene to load, I'm going to call this our current scene. So what I'm going to do is if I just double click it and highlight the entire variable, and type Control RR, it'll allow us to just rename it, and we can call this current scene. And what you'll notice is anywhere we're using that variable, it'll also change it there, so we don't have to kind of skim through our entire code and find every spot that we use that variable. It'll just rename it throughout the entire script, which is really handy. So we're calling it current scene now, and we're doing that because right now when we reload our scene, we just want it to reload our current scene. So what we can do is we can just tell the script what our current scene always is. So we can just say in our start function right underneath the player, we can say current scene is equal to scene manager dot get active scene, and let's see, what do we need to do here? We need to give it the parentheses, and we're going to say dot name, like that. So what that's going to do is going to tell our scene manager to get the name of our active scene, and that's what our current scene is. Perfect. So now if we go ahead and save all of this, nothing is going to happen at all, because what happened is we did not call that function here in our enemy script. So what we need to do, because we have a reference to our game manager, we can just say the GM dot kill player, parentheses, open close, and semicolon. So let's save that, go back into Unity, and we wait for it to compile and hit play. Our game should work exactly the way that it did before. Perfect. Now it immediately reloaded the scene, and the reason that is is we changed where this variable is, and it automatically reset this back to 0. So we can put that to 1. I think we had it at 2, but let's go ahead and put it to 1 just to make sure that it works. And if we keep this highlighted, you'll notice that here in current scene, it automatically puts in our current scene, which is exactly what we want. So now let's hit this enemy again, waits for a second, and then reloads the scene. So, perfect, exactly what we wanted to do. So now what I want to do is I want to do something similar with our coin and our UI. What I want to do is on our coin script, what we can do is actually on our game manager script, let's go ahead and create a new function. We'll call it public void collect coin. And then when we collect a coin, what do we want to do? We want to destroy that coin object, and we want to add 1 to our score on our UI. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to bring this over because it's a little bit more difficult to reference multiple objects the way we did the player controller or game manager. So I'm not going to do that right now at the moment, but what I am going to do is I'm still going to use this canvas score plus plus here. So if I cut that out, go into our game manager and put it in our collect coin function, it doesn't have a reference to our canvas yet. So we're going to do this up here for our UI manager. We're going to say private UI manager, and we're going to call this UI man. And then in our start function, we will say UI man is equal to find object of type UI manager parentheses semicolon. Just like that. So now we have a reference to our canvas, except in our coin script, we called it canvas as the UI manager instead. So we can actually get rid of this here because we're not calling that anymore. And we can get rid of this here. And on our game manager script, instead of canvas.score++, we can say UI manager or UI man.score++. Perfect. So now what do we want to do? I'm gonna bring that up. And that's all we really want to do here for our coin as well. So if we go ahead and save all of that, go back into Unity, and hit play. Now our game should work still exactly the way that we left it, except it is not updating in here. Why is that? Let's see. Oh, because we are not calling this function yet again. So what we need to do in our coin script, in our on trigger enter, we're also going to call the GM if we have a reference to it. So up at the top, we're going to say, not public, private, game manager, the GM. And this time I want to keep the variable names for these exactly the same, so that it's just the same across the board and it's really easy to remember what we need to reference. So once we reference that, we're going to say the GM is equal to find object of type game manager, parentheses, semicolon, and now in here we can reference the GM dot collect coin. Perfect. Now if we save it, go back into Unity, wait for it to compile and hit play. Now our game should work exactly the same without any problems. So if we collect the coin, it goes up 1 in our score. If we hit the enemy, kills off the player, waits a second, and restarts the scene. Perfect. So now what do we want to do now? So we also have, if we go into Unity, you'll notice that we have this missing reference exception, and we're getting this error because if I go ahead and clear this, I'm going to go ahead and hit play with this console open. You'll see where we're getting the error. We're getting this error when we kill off our player, because what it's doing, we're getting multiple of these because while there's no player in the scene, we have our camera trying to reference that player, and it can't do that because there is no player in the scene. So what I'm going to do instead of destroying the player, I'm going to go back into our script. I'm going to go into our game manager script here, and where we're destroying the player, I'm just going to go ahead and comment that out really quick. And right below it, instead of destroying the player, I'm going to say the player dot game object dot set active false. And what that's going to do is, instead of completely removing it from our hierarchy up here, it's just going to check this box right here and set it to false. That was our enemy script, or that was our enemy object, but if we set this to false, our player disappears, but it's still in our hierarchy. So let's try that out, see if it works. Make sure I saved it. Let it compile. Hit play. And now, when we kill off our player, we no longer get that error. Perfect. That is exactly what we want to do. Great. So I think that's going to do it for this video. Yeah, that's all we really need to do right now. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe. If you have any ideas on what we can add into this, or if you have a better way of doing something, please share it in the comments below. I'll do my best to respond to all of the comments and put in whatever I can as far as suggestions go. But other than that, I will see you next time.